Welcome to another episode of Draft Season, a proud part of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity, learn more at Moody's.com. Hello, everybody. John Schmeelk battling a cold. I'll fight through it today. Tony Pauline will do most of the talking. We're gonna have Tony. We're gonna have Jim Nagy. Oh, he's so psyched about that too. We're gonna have Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl, the director of the Senior Bowl. He's gonna join us in the second half of this program. We're not gonna do a ton of college football playoff stuff today. That'll be next week's show, right before the games. But we are gonna talk about the conference championship games this week. Tony Pauline from Sports Kita. Tony, how are you, buddy?
I'm okay. It was an interesting weekend, huh? Some upsets, some surprises, and then you mentioned the college football playoffs. You had all the rankings there and the pairings, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to debate up until the games are played, starting next Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some of the conference title games. Let's start in the Big 12, where Cam Scatterbo dominated from start to finish, and boy, he looks good.
As he has all season long. I mean, he's had 7 games of 147 yards or more, transfer from Sacramento State. You look at his numbers this year, over 1,100 yards rushing, 37 receptions for 506 yards. Came into the season graded as a priority free agent. Now you're looking at Scatterbo likely in that Braylon Allen area, that fourth, fifth round area. Reminds me a lot of Brian Leonard for people who want to go back a little ways. Remember Brian Leonard out of Rutgers, the bigger ball carrier who used to dole out punishment, and that's what Scatterbo does. I mean, he seems to enjoy punishing the opponents. He runs into them head first, picks up a lot of yardage off initial contact, but he's more than a downhill runner. He's got some quickness to his game. He shows great vision. He has the ability to get to the outside. It's impossible for one person to bring him down. That's what he likes. He's a fun guy to watch, but he's also turned himself, I believe, into a legitimate middle round pick.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what his 40 time is going to be. I don't think that's the one weakness, right? What his top speed is, but breaking tackles, quickness, vision, all that stuff. He looks like he's going to be a very effective back. Who else from that game jumped out?
And that's why I say Braylon Allen. You remember Braylon Allen, his big issue was speed, and he never ran for scouts. And look how well he's doing, albeit with the New York Jets, more than just a road grader, a guy that's been able to create yardage and really do a variety of things. You got to like Arizona State's right tackle, Max Ian Anchor. He's a guy who came into the season with priority free agent grades. He's now being graded as early as the fourth round. He's a big, thick right tackle. He goes 6'6", 320 pounds, but he's not an immobile offensive lineman. He gets out to the second level. He's able to annihilate opponents. He's got that big, thick lower body that the teams want in the build of an offensive lineman. He's played well all season long. Better run blocker than pass protector, but he's not a bad pass protector at all. I'm sure we're going to be seeing both of these guys in either the Shrine or the Senior Bowl. I haven't seen their names popped up yet, but I guarantee you both of them will play in either of those games, assuming they're healthy. And now, they're just focused on that second round because Arizona State got a bye because they were the Big 12 champions. So they're going to be playing the week after Christmas.
All right, let's go over to the SEC title game here. Texas and Georgia, obviously a very tight game. And still neither quarterback, Tony, and Carson Beck got hurt in the game. Quinn Ewers had some picks. Neither guy, I don't think, changed any minds based on their performance.
And Carson Beck was not playing all that well before he got hurt. Now it's kind of up in the air. But, I mean, we have, kind of he's ragged on Carson Beck all season long, deservedly so. But, I mean, Quinn Ewers has not played that well at all. I mean, you look at some of the top quarterbacks in this year's draft, and Quinn Ewers at one point in time was considered one of the top quarterbacks in this draft. You look at Cam Ward, you look at Shedeur Sanders, you look at Jalen Milroe. When a team needs a big drive, you have confidence, especially in a guy like Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, that quarterback is going to take his team down the field. When you watch Quinn Ewers, when he goes back to pass, you kind of wince and hope for the best with Quinn Ewers. He still doesn't see the field all that well. He's still slow in making his decisions. I mean, many of us remember that game as a true freshman against Alabama when he was playing lights out before he broke his collarbone. And everybody was like, wow, this guy is going to be the next big-time quarterback prospect, the next quote unquote franchise quarterback. Have not seen that from him. He doesn't show much progression. He's making the same mistakes in his game. Very disappointed in his game. And, late in the game when Texas had the opportunity to drive down and score, he didn't do it for them. Just a lot of questions about Quinn Ewers. I don't think he's going to be a first-round pick. And there were some people, especially in Giant Land, who thought he was going to be a top 10 pick. That was going to be the selection for the Giants. He may be a top 10 pick, but I think it's going to be in round 2, not in round 1.
Well, do you think there's a chance that he might go transfer portal, Tony, and try to get better somewhere else next year?
I think he's going to enter the draft. I think that he's probably had it with college football. I think the NFL is his next stop. I think there's probably a less than 1% chance that he enters the transfer portal and is playing college football next year. I think he's got his heart set on entering the NFL draft.
What do you think about the Texas offensive line in that game?
Well, last week we spoke about Cameron Williams. We spoke about him a couple times, the big right tackle from Texas that's getting a lot of love in draft Twitter. People are talking about him as a first-round pick. I just don't see it. I know people love his size. He's big. He can dominate opponents. I think they said during the broadcast he's the most penalized offensive lineman in the nation, if he's not the most penalized offensive lineman in the nation. He's one of the most penalized offensive linemen in the nation. And you can see why, because there's a lot of immobility in his game. And I spoke about this last week with Trevor from PFF. He rumbles around the field. The penalties are because he's getting beaten by quick edge rushers and he's got to grab onto them. People love his size, but, as the Giants have found out with Evan Neal, big, huge 355-pound linemen don't always translate all that well to the next level. Williams is good. He's a prototypical right tackle, but there are a lot of red flags in his game. I don't think he's a shoo-in to be a first-round pick, as people are predicting now. He's got upside, but he needs a lot of polish. Just did not think it was a good game from Williams or Quinn Ewers from Texas, which is why they lost.
Your thoughts on the Big Ten championship game between Penn State and Oregon, which went down to the wire?
Yeah, Penn State kept it close for the most part. I'm going to go the opposite direction. Again, we spoke last week about PFF not having Josh Connerly, Oregon's left tackle, in their top 100. And I watched Connerly a lot during that game to say, hey, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm wrong. And when I watched him, all I did was fall in love with him even more as an offensive lineman because the footwork and pass protection, the lateral range, the ability to slide out and take Abdul Carr out of the game, the ability to get to the second level, even the third level, and block in motion. The guy is incredibly athletic. He's incredibly agile, mobile, needs to get a little bit stronger. Not the biggest guy in the world, kind of that Kelvin Banks sort of, is he big enough to play left tackle? He doesn't have the height. We'll have to wait and see what the arm length is. But the more I watched Connerly, the more I was basically affirmed in my belief that the guy's a first-round pick. And if he's not a left tackle on Sunday, he's going to be an outstanding zone blocking guard.
No question about it. You want to talk about an Oregon wide receiver, not the one we've talked a lot about this year. You want to talk about the other one, Tez Johnson, who's really fast. He's really small.
Yeah, well, he's thin. He's like 5'10", 163 pounds. But you're right. He's fast. He's mobile. He's a good receiver. Xavier Worthy last year hopped in the first round. Everybody was going crazy over the 4.19 at the combine. He had some big plays throughout his Texas career. But when I look at Tez Johnson, he's not as fast as Xavier Worthy, but he's probably a more accomplished receiver at this point in time. He had this year 78 receptions for 866 yards and 10 touchdowns. Last year, had 11 receptions for 181 yards and 1 TD against Penn State. Last year with Bo Nix, 86 receptions for 1,182 yards. The prior 2 years when he played at Troy as a freshman and sophomore, 123 combined receptions. So the production is there. He's a real good receiver. He's just not the biggest guy in the world. Came into the season with late round grades, but I think Tez Johnson's absolutely going to move into the middle rounds, could even contend as a day 2 pick because of the speed, because of the pass catching ability, which we have seen really for the past 2 years at Oregon. And if you watch them the past 4 years, dating back to his days at Troy.
And Evan Stewart did not play in that game, correct?
I did not see him, so I'll take your word on it. I mean, I was watching Connerly, and then Tez Johnson jumped off the film on me.
Yeah, I did. He did not show up in the box score, and I did not notice him out there on the field. So I'm guessing there was some type of injury there. That's something we can check out and confirm as we move forward here. Terrence Ferguson, Tony, tell me about him.
Yeah, the tight end. Yeah, I mean, he's a complete tight end for Oregon. He's a terrific pass catcher. Wins out for the contested throws. Uh, has natural hands. Not the fastest guy in the world, but he's also a vicious blocker. I mean, he's a good blocker on the line of scrimmage. He'll get out to the second level. He's more your conventional, prototypical three-down tight end who's not going to go early because he's not going to test very well. Probably going to be a middle-round choice. But any team that drafts Terrence Ferguson, say in the fourth round or so, is going to get a very, very good number 2 tight end that they can put on the field on third and short, third and 3, or say, as a blocker or as a pass catcher, and he's going to do a good job for you. I think Terrence Ferguson, like a lot of those guys on that Oregon team, which is undefeated, has really helped this draft stock this year.
What else in the weekend jumped out at you, Tony?
I mean, there was some good game. The Sun Belt, Marshall, Michael Green. If you watch the Sun Belt championship, Marshall and Louisiana, they basically focused on Michael Green, the pass rusher from Marshall that we've spoken about a couple of times, and tried to take him out of the game. He's going to be a day 2 pick. And then Ashton Genty just running over UNLV, a UNLV team that was pretty good. And Ashton Genty had his way with UNLV, like a lot of people thought, and not only affirmed himself as one of the top 10 players in the 2025 draft, but I think really made a lot of people who have a Heisman Trophy vote think, am I going with Travis Hunter, or am I going to go with this Ashton Genty guy from Boise State, who basically carried the team to a first-round bye in the college football playoffs?
By the way, I checked. Evan Stewart did play 57 snaps in that game.
Okay.
He just did not have a catch in the game, Tony. So the inconsistency for him continues.
And we've talked about that. Yep. I mean, we talked about that with Dane Brugler. With Stewart, the potential's off the charts. And when he makes plays, you're wowed. And you look at his size, you look at his speed, his pass-catching skill, but there's a lot of streakiness. And if Evan Stewart enters the draft like I am expecting him to, that streakiness is going to be a point of contention that scouts talk to him about and even ask the Oregon coaches about in the lead up to the draft.
All right, Tony, it is a quiet weekend in college football. Not a whole lot going on, but there are some games that have caught your eye. Of course, you have the Army-Navy game. Yep. That and a whole lot more. Tell us about what you're watching this weekend.
Yeah, the Veterans Bowl, South Alabama. The Veterans Bowl, which is be played in Montgomery, Alabama, includes South Alabama. We talked about Tez Johnson, smaller receiver from Oregon. South Alabama has their own smaller receiver who's going to be a late-round pick, Jamal Pritchett, 5'8.5", 170 pounds. He's a guy who runs in the mid-4.4s. He's had 91 receptions for 1,126 yards this year, 11 TDs. And that, really projects as a slot receiver. You line him up off the line of scrimmage. You get him in motion. Terrific pass catcher. Very, very productive. Has consistently done the job, but he's 5'8.5". What that means is there's just not going to be a huge market for his services come draft time, but it doesn't mean he's not going to be a good NFL player. Also can double up as a return specialist, a punt returner. So I think keep an eye on Jamal Pritchett. Wakevius Thomas, the defensive nose tackle from South Alabama, 6-year senior, was projected as a late-round pick by scouts coming into the year, but he's never really progressed. He had a great sophomore season with 49 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, really caught a lot of people's eyes, but his game has kind of leveled off, if not even regressed a little bit. So I think he's fighting to stay in that late-round conversation. I have him as a PFA grade right now. And then the Celebration Bowl, the SWAC versus the MEAC. Keep an eye on South Carolina State linebacker Aaron Smith. We're going to see him at the Shrine Bowl. 6 foot, 225 pounds, runs in the 4.5s, plays that way. He's a one-gap, run-and-chase linebacker, great in pursuit, 36 tackles. He's smart, and he's feisty. He does a great job reading and diagnosing plays, very instinctive, and he's not afraid to go up against the bigger tight ends, go up against the bigger running backs. So he's got to keep an eye on that at Celebration Bowl, and then we'll see him again during Shrine Game practices.
Moody's is a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. And now we're joined by Jim Nagy, Executive Director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. He joins Tony Pauline and I right here on draft season. Jim, good to talk to you, man. I know this is a busy time for you. Appreciate you taking a few minutes for us.
Yeah, John, Tony, good to see you guys again.
All right,
Thanks,
so tell us, where are you in terms of your process right now? Do you have a large list of guys that have accepted invitations? So what is mid-December like for you as you try to kind of fill out your roster?
Yeah, we're in the thick of it right now. It's a busy time, obviously a really busy time. It's a little different than in the past. Having the juniors available to us is a great thing. Nobody's complaining, but it certainly creates different layers of work that we haven't had to do in the past. So again, it's a good problem to have. But right now, just trying to track down, which juniors are going to come out, who represents them, do they want to play in the game or not? So there's just a lot of back channeling, trying to figure this stuff out. So a lot of talk, a lot of conversations with coaches, a lot of conversations with agents. So that's really what we're trying to do. And now that we got through championship weekend, a lot of things are going to fall in place. So this is going to be a big week in terms of finalizing this roster. Right now, we're coming on to about 100 accepted invites. Not all those are public. We can't announce the juniors for a little bit here. But yeah, we're going to be getting close.
Okay, so for the juniors, go ahead, Tony.
You kind of went into the question that I was going to ask. There's juniors that we know are going to enter the draft, and there's word out there that they've already agreed with an agent, but they've yet officially announced their decision. Is it a situation where you say, okay, if this guy enters, he is going to get an invite to the Senior Bowl? Are you allowed to do that, and do you do that?
Yeah, I like to stay away from that, Tony. That's sensitive, man. Like I know what these coaches, most of these schools are trying to keep the players in. So I'm not trying to dangle Senior Bowl invites to get these guys to come out. Again, I don't think that's the end all be all. I don't think these guys are leaving school to come play in the Senior Bowl. I think they see it as an important part of their process if they do come out. But and again, some agents do that. Some agents try to get you to commit to that. I'm certainly not comfortable with it. If it gets to that point, sometimes I'll just call the head coach and be like, "Hey, coach, I'm getting hit up by a lot of agents on, player X. And here's the conversations that are going about. Like, where are you at with this guy coming out? Are you trying to keep him in? Are you good with him leaving? For most of these juniors, if they're going to be top 2 or 3 round guys, most head coaches understand it's probably behooves the player to come out. So yeah, we try to do everything above board. We don't try to, go behind anybody. And these relationships with the coaches are more meaningful to us than anything. So yeah, those conversations do take place. There's a lot going on. But again, we try to do everything the right way.
So then internally, though, I imagine, without reaching out and obviously doing everything the right way, you guys might have to say, all right, we're going to hold a few spots back here in case this player who we think might be coming out comes out, because we would want him at our game, correct?
We have to. You can't just invite. This isn't 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even, where you just invite the top 130 seniors and feel good about the list. That's just not the world we live in now. So it's that delicate balance of inviting. And I don't know if we've done it right this year. We'll see. Time will tell. But you try to invite the right number of seniors and leave enough spots open for the juniors. Again, and then players are going to fall out between the time they accept and game week anyway. Like I went back over the last 4 years, we've lost an average of 21 players that accepted invites before they get to Mobile, whether that's them going back to school for NIL money, which happened 7 or 8 times last year, or that's guys getting hurt in bowl games or hurt in training, or just an agent, a player commits to us before he signs with an agent, and then the agent gets on board and doesn't want him to play in the game. So it's a moving target, to say the least. So again, time will tell. We're trying to land on the right number. Again, there's only a finite room, hotel space and hotel rooms and all those things. So it's really a difficult puzzle to put together right now.
Well, when I'm in Mobile, I rent a great Airbnb right down the road so I can wash my clothes. But what can you tell us? Where are you, or where are we with Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck potentially participating in the Senior Bowl? Because I think it's imperative that, considering the disappointing seasons that these guys have had, that they go to the Senior Bowl and light it up. Because as I've said, and as you well know, the Senior Bowl has been a kingmaker at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Carson had the injury this weekend. That was really unfortunate. I don't know the nature of that yet. Spoke to some people in Athens yesterday to try to get a handle on it, but that was tough, man. I mean, that was a bad looking injury. I've actually had that happen to me back in high school, and that was a tough looking injury. So we'll see on that one. And then obviously, if we can't invite Quinn yet. He's a redshirt junior, so that I think we sent 5 or 6 invites to Texas. I believe Stark gave those out yesterday. So they haven't even had those in hand yet. And so we can't do that. We can't pull the trigger on Quinn. So if he comes out, and I think there's a strong possibility he'll come out. Yeah. If he does, obviously we'd love to have him here in Mobile. The guy can throw it with anybody. And he's going to interview great. He's got a really good football mind. So we'd love to have him if he comes out. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, just generally in terms of the quarterbacks, I think I saw 2 officially accepted invites, Jim, if I'm not mistaken. I might have miscounted when I was going through the list. Is that a position where there's really a finite number of snaps to go around, where this process can get a little tricky for you?
We've got Will Howard. We've got Tyler Shuck. I'm trying to think who. Riley Leonard. So we're getting. We've got a couple more. We just invited another one yesterday. And I spoke to the player on the phone. He was really excited about it. So I feel good about where that position's at. There's another one that didn't invite out to where a player might be going back to school is the latest thing we've heard. So, and then the wild card in the whole thing is if Drew Allaire comes out and he's making a nice run here in this season at Penn State. He's winning some big games, and now he's got a college football playoff ahead of him. So, it's kind of a fluid deal right now. We like the guys we've got locked in. We like the guys that we've invited. But I think whether it's 6 guys on the roster or 8 guys on the roster, there's going to be plenty of snaps to go around. I feel good either way.
How important is this pre-draft process going to be this year, Jim? And not just the quarterbacks, for everybody. Tony and I have been reviewing this class over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, and there is no consistency talking to one person to another as to how they have this class stacked up here. I feel like in a class like this, things like the All-Star games, the Senior Bowl, they're going to be super important as teams try to sort through how they're going to stack up their boards, especially in a season like this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why, I've said it. Not trying to put the cart before the horse or whatever that old phrase is, but no, I think this should be our best year. We had 10 first-round picks last year. All 10 of them were seniors. The league announced the junior rule the first week in November. I felt like that was a little late in terms of gaining traction with the underclassmen. We certainly didn't get a lot of buy-in from that junior class. I think we had 16 guys. I think with a full year to kind of, get the information out to these juniors. And then I think, having conversations with agents, there was a number of juniors last year that opted not to come to the game, and they got passed up by some seniors that played in the game. So again, I think we should have our best year. And I think the uncertain nature of the first round should help us. You talk to teams right now. Some teams have 8, 9, 10 first-round grades. In an average year, that number's in the teens. In a good year, that number's probably in the low to mid-20s, 22, 23 first-round grades. So in a year like that, it's wide open. So that's my conversation I'm having with these agents every day. This thing's wide open, man. You can't feel good about your guy being locked in being a first-round draft pick right now. There's this really small handful of guys that I feel like in that, top 10 area are just locks. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But I'm excited about the number of juniors we have on board right now that we haven't announced. I think when we do announce those names, the draft community is going to be really fired up to see some of these guys in Mobile. So we're just kind of waiting on that date from the league office when we can release those names.
Last one for me, and then I'll let Tony run through with the players he wants to ask you about, Jim. Want to ask you about the defensive line group. To me, that's one of the big magnifying glasses we're going to have during the week there. You already have some really good guys that have committed: Landon Jackson, Josiah Stewart, Jordan Birch, Kyle Kennard, Shamar Turner, some really good players. I feel like that's going to be one of the real positions of strength when we get down to Mobile in end of January.
Yeah, and wait till we announce some of these juniors. Yeah, it's good. It is. This is the year. Everyone always asks, what are the positions of strength in this year's draft? And I'd say running back and defensive line. Tight end's pretty good. there's good players at every position, right? But the D line group is stacked. Whereas last year the offensive line was really stacked. I think we had 5 of our first rounders were offensive linemen. I think is that number, and again, I think that number is going to flip. I think right now, committed, we've got 7 or 8 first round defensive linemen, potential or likely first rounders in that group. So one-on-ones are always kind of the main event down here in the trenches, and there should be some really good battles this year.
I want to ask you just overall, I'm on the website last night looking at the accepted invites, and what really caught my eye is Oregon already has 5 players that have committed to playing in the Senior Bowl. And Senior Bowl practices start, a week and a half after the national championship game is to be played, and Oregon is expected to get to that national championship game. They're undefeated. I mean, what does that say about the culture of the University of Oregon, that you've already got 5 guys committed to play in your game, which is less than 10 days after the national championship game?
Yeah, I think it says a lot about what Dan's built. I think it says a lot about the Senior Bowl and what players feel like they can get out of this week. But no, I talked to Dan last week about a number of his guys. And again, this new college football playoff format, some of these players are a little apprehensive, because they don't want to commit and then have to back out. And I told him, that's my problem. Let me deal with that. If you make a deep run into the playoffs and your guys are beat up physically and they don't feel like they can get to Mobile, that's on me. That's my job to figure that out. So we sent a bunch of invites out there to Eugene. I'm trying to think if there was any outstanding left. I don't believe so. There's a couple more underclassmen that if they come out will be in the mix, and even a couple more seniors that if we don't get a couple of these high-end juniors that we'll circle back on. That's a loaded roster. I mean, to me, them and Ohio State, in terms of NFL prospects, probably have the 2 most between those 2 programs. So again, and when people are on the fence, and I'm talking to agents about the short timetable this year, I keep going back to 2019 with that LSU Clemson game, and national championship was on Monday. The players reported in Mobile on Sunday. So the same exact timetable. And we had 8 players between those 2 schools come to Mobile and play. And a number of them were top 100 picks, Damian Lewis, Lloyd Cushenberry, off the top of my head. I mean, there's a number of those guys came here. I almost see it as a benefit. Like, again, if a guy's beat up physically, that's one thing. But if they're not and they feel okay, I mean, they haven't taken the pads off. They're still in football mode. A lot of these guys just took the pads off and they won't put them back on until Senior Bowl week. So, there won't be any rust. They won't be in shorts and T-shirts for 2 months. So it actually might work in their favor.
Going to ask you about a bunch of players. Give me your thoughts on them. Start off with a small school guy from the state of Alabama. I was glad to see him get the invite and accepted. Carson Vincent, the left tackle from Alabama A&M. Tall guy, love his fundamentals, love the mechanics. Don't know that he's going to be a left tackle in the NFL, but give us a little breakdown on Vincent.
Yeah, excited to get Carson in. It was fun to go up there. We did a little in-person invite with John Stallworth, greatest player in Alabama A&M history, Senior Bowl, one of our greatest players in our game's history. So that was fun. But yeah, you nailed it. I mean, he's a good athlete. He's got good feet. He's really long. He's got a great temperament. I mean, they came down here and played in a classic against Georgia or Jackson State. And I mean, I thought he was going to get flagged about every other snap. I mean, he plays beyond the whistle, which is cool to see. I think you can rein that back. I think it's hard to coach that into a guy. You can certainly try to rein that guy in, but there's a lot to like. And then when you talk to the people at the school, he's an A-plus character guy. This is a kid that doesn't have a car, has never been late for anything, never misses anything, never has an excuse for anything. So it's really kind of refreshing in the world we're living in now of guys driving Maseratis and Lamborghinis around campus. This guy doesn't even have a car. So they have 5:30 in the morning practices at Alabama A&M, and he was never late for anything. And so, I got calls from a number of guys in the NFL, leaving that early morning practice in Huntsville, making the drive to Tuscaloosa. And they said, Jim, you got to bring this kid. Like he deserves it. So, I'm excited for Carson. I think he's going to come down here and compete his tail off, and we'll see where it goes. But like I told him when I went up there, like he's going to be able to. There's nobody down here he can't block. I do not. There are certain players, certain small school guys that we like as late round players that I just feel like if we bring them, they won't show well and it might hurt them. Carson Vincent doesn't fall in that category for me.
Another small school guy from Central Arkansas, David Walker. Terrific pass rusher on a small school level, linebacker size. Tell us about him, what he's going to have to show during Senior Bowl week.
Yeah, cool track record of a D2 guy that made the jump to FCS. You love seeing that. And then he, kind of spurned offers to make the jump to FBS because he wanted to stay loyal to the Central Arkansas guys and Coach Brown and that staff. So what I would say about him, he's a really accomplished pass rusher. You can see it, Tony. The guy knows how to rush. He's got really good instincts. He's got power. He's slippery. He can beat you in a lot of different ways, I guess is the best way of saying it. He's got a lot of different pitches. So I think he's going to show really well. He knows it's going to be a big week for him. As you mentioned, he's kind of tweenerish size-wise. But there's a lot of guys his size that are really good pass rushers in the National Football League. So excited to see what he can do here.
Talk about two quarterbacks not named Cam Ward. First, Tyler Show of Louisville. Interesting story. I believe he's a seventh-year senior. Started his career at Oregon. Everyone thought that this was going to be the natural replacement for Justin Herbert. Had a great, terrific season at Oregon. Transfers to Texas Tech, I apologize. A lot of injuries, a lot of inconsistency. Goes to Louisville this year and seems to get his game back on track. What's the thought process in having Show go to the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, we had those conversations with the teams on our calls. I was worried about the age and the durability. And on those calls, it was pretty clear the NFL was not very concerned about those things. If you can get 2 contracts out of a quarterback, that's a successful draft pick, right? And that's, in 8 years, these guys are playing so late. If they're really good enough, they're going to play into their late 30s anyway. So the age thing at quarterback really isn't a concern. The injury stuff is, like I talked to Tyler about, it's a couple collarbones, a broken leg. It wasn't anything major joint stuff. So again, that stuff, and he can throw it as good as anybody in this class. I'll put this dude's arm talent up against anybody. I just remember the first time I met him was at the Manning camp. This was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And I showed up and they'd already had one throwing session the day before. And I ran into my friend David Morris, who runs the camp there for the Manning family. And, he's a personal QB coach. He's going to be working with Riley Leonard. And I think he's working with Tyler in this cycle. And I said, who impressed you day one? And the first name out of his mouth was Tyler Shough. So, he can rip it. You're going to love watching him down here. For those people that haven't seen him throw live, they're in for a treat. This guy's got as much arm talent as anyone.
Riley Leonard, Notre Dame by way of Duke. We kind of got on his case early in the season because he was more of a running quarterback, more of an athlete trying to play the quarterback position. But it seems the last month and a half, he's really starting to develop as a passer. I don't know if you see that or even agree with it.
No, I totally agree with it. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think what happened was, I think everyone that follows it knows Riley had that ankle injury last year. And it was really a nagging deal. He was down here training in the off season in the spring. I went and saw him throw, and it was a difficult rehab. And so he didn't get a lot of work in the off season, moving to Notre Dame. So I feel like at the beginning of the year, that staff was trying to learn him. He was trying to learn the guys around him. So it was just a little bit of a slow process. But like you said, he's really catching fire. If you talk to people in the league right now, he's probably the biggest riser, in the second half of the season. I think, to start the year, a lot of teams had Riley in the 4th and 5th round. I'm getting a lot of day 2 love back right now on Riley Leonard because, in terms of the size, the athlete, the character, which is off the charts. I'm telling you, this is as good a kid as you'll ever come across. The leadership. Teams feel better about those things with Riley than they do about some of the guys being talked about above Riley. So I'll be really excited to see how his process goes. He's got some really big stage opportunities here in the college football playoff. I hope he plays well. This is a guy I'm just a fan of. I've been watching him since he played high school ball down here, football and basketball. He's a great kid, man. So I'm excited to see where it's going for him. But the trajectory is certainly up.
Good defensive lineman who I don't think fits that mold, but a guy who's just, in my opinion, is woefully underrated. Ty Robinson of Nebraska. You watch him, they line him up on the inside, they put him at nose tackle, they line him up on the edge, and the guy always makes plays. I was at the Ohio State game, and he just ate up the Ohio State offensive line. What do you project for him? Is he a defensive tackle? Is he a defensive end? Is he just the guy that they're going to move around all over the field? And what's the draft projection right now? Because no one talks about this guy, but whenever you watch Nebraska, number 9 is always making plays.
Tony, you need to come work on our staff next year. He's one of our favorite guys in the office. He has been for a couple of years now. Scott McLuhan, the former GM, was on our staff last year. Kind of more of a consultant role this year, but this is one of Scott's favorite guys last year.
Yeah.
And like you said, you turn on the tape and he just wrecks shop. Again, I said to your latter point, I do think he's a guy you just move around. I think he's got a ton of versatility. If you don't plan on moving him around, I think you're doing him a disservice. I hope he goes to a place that is open-minded and creative with how you can use the guy, because I think he can be disruptive from a lot of different alignments and a lot of different fronts. But he plays his tail off. We love what he's going to bring to practice, kind of like what Braden Fisk brought to practice last year. I kind of expect the same type of energy and tenacity out of Ty Robinson. So, and then the cool part was connecting with Matt Rule about him. And just hearing Matt talk about him, we're fired up. I mean, I don't know. I don't see a lot of his stuff on, mock drafts and all that stuff either. I don't think the guy gets out of day two. I really don't. I mean, I don't see that happen.
Two non-power 5 defensive backs, Caleb Ransaw, who was well-liked in the scouting community, Tulane by way of Troy, physical, instinctive, always gets involved in the action. But what is he? Is he a safety? Is he a cornerback? Is he a nickel back? What is your projection for Raz now?
Yeah, he's all that. He's all that. He is. He's kind of that Swiss Army knife. We had a guy in the game a few years ago, Shamari Connor, who's playing really good ball right now for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think they're similar in that sense. But at the bottom line, they're both football players. I mean, Ransaw, John Summerall, the head coach at Tulane's a good friend. I kind of thought he was giving me a sales pitch over the summer when we talked about Caleb, and then I watched the tape. I'm like, no, he wasn't selling me on him. He's a really good player. So, I think he can play nickel because he's a really good tackler. He's good run support. Same reason he can go back and play safety. He's at the end of the day, he's just a football player. Teams that value, I don't know how Caleb's going to do with the combine and all that stuff. I don't know. But teams that value football players, that are really going to like this guy. So again, he's one of those guys. When we had the announcement that he was coming to the game, he was one of those players that my phone lit up from a number of scouts, like excited they're going to see him here.
Yeah, sure. Last guy for me, kind of off the radar before the season started, Upton Stout of Western Kentucky. Give us a little breakdown on him.
Love this guy, man. Love this guy. He's only 5'8", so he's little. And I was raised in the NFL. It's a big man's game, and worked in programs that really valued size at every position and really went away from smaller guys. But man, this guy is different. His urgency, his play style. He certainly doesn't play small. I mean, if you go back, they played him mostly in the slot this year. They blitzed him a ton. He's really fun to watch that way. And but you go back to last year, they played him outside and put him on Marvin Harrison Jr., and this dude competed his butt off. He doesn't play small. Even when the ball's in the air, this guy goes up and gets it. Love his tenacity. He's just following up on Ransaw. I mean, they're a little different, but they play with the same urgency. So he's really a fun guy to watch. I think he's going to have a really good week down here. Another kind of under the radar guy. He's just too good of a player not to invite here. He deserves it. I mean, the way he plays the game is how every coach. I mean, coaches are going to fall in love with this guy. The guy that I kind of equate him to that I've scouted in the past, and he didn't fit for us in Seattle. And I kind of went to bat for the guy. We had kind of a designation on our grading scale for guys that were good football players that didn't fit what we wanted in Seattle. Was LaMarcus Joyner, and when he was at Florida State, and that was my exception guy. It was one of the only guys in my 5 years I really tried to battle for. Didn't fit the size parameters, but just loved the versatility. That could play free safety, could play nickel, could play outside. And to me, Upton Stout's kind of that guy.
All right, final one. I'm a little disappointed Tony didn't ask about this guy, Jim. I think one of your biggest invitees, Trevor Skogerbo. Big get for you guys, man. Congratulations. Yeah.
We're fired up, man. Getting Trevor out here, Cal equipment guy. That was it was pretty cool, man. Obviously,
it was very cool.
If people that weren't familiar, that video went viral and everything, and the guy gets up off the bench. Some idiot tries to steal a Cal helmet. He runs him down and throws him down. It's cool to find out the kid was a wrestler in high school. You saw it. He kind of suplexed the guy and slammed him. But honestly, there was a little social media play there. We got a lot of traction on it. It was cool to see I just love the traction part of it because it shows enough people know what the heck the Senior Bowl is. You know, we got like a couple million views on it. And I think a couple years ago, we might not have had a couple million views because people wouldn't know about the Senior Bowl. But no, we've connected with Trevor. We're going to get him out here. The two guys that run the equipment thing for us now that we don't have the NFL teams a part of our football operations. We've got Greg Stringfellow, longtime LSU equipment guy, and John Mishat, longtime Georgia equipment guy, two kind of, icons in the space. They're excited to work with this guy. And what I loved about it, man, he took pride in his job. And I want people around this game that are passionate about what their role is. And that kid showed it. It was cool. I want to, kind of want to give him a reward.
And by the way, I was going to go ahead, Tony.
It's funny because I don't spend that much time on social media. I did see your tweet on that, and I commented on how great the backside pursuit was from that kid from whatever we were standing on to go get the equipment.
Yeah, so Jim, last one from me, and I was going to wrap things up, but you just popped something in my head when you mentioned the NFL. How's the coaching deal working this year with you guys? Is it going to be the same situation as last year with how the coaches are set up, and when do those decisions start getting made?
Yeah, they've done away with the two full staffs in the all-star space. So they're going to this developmental coach up format, which is great. The old selling point that you were around two full staffs, I thought was a great thing. We had that for 73 years. I wasn't happy when the league changed that up, to be quite honest. But you know what? Now the benefit is our players had access to 18 different teams last year behind the scenes. So you've got 18 different teams represented in all these meeting rooms, and 3 meals a day and out on the practice field. So that's really a benefit to these guys. So that's, again, the timetable with the CFP is pretty tight. And now the timing of, having an 18-week, 17-game schedule pushes the playoffs back. So we're going to have about a 2-week to 10-day turnaround time between us getting the staffs announced and those guys having to put, playbooks together and pulling this whole thing together. So it's very short, but man, it's really a great week. One of the coolest parts of Senior Bowl week for me now is we have a dinner every Saturday night before Senior Bowl week starts for the coaching staff. And to see that group come together throughout the week is really awesome. It's usually like with this format, it's a lot of younger coaches. And, we had Shea out here last year from the Giants. And, and again, these are a lot of young coaches that have only worked with one team. So they don't have a large network of people across the league. This isn't like scouts that are on the road and seeing people from other teams. They're in their buildings every day, and that's all they're exposed to. So they leave Mobile with all these new friendships and connections that they never had, which to me, that's all the feedback I get. They love the week. They love the visibility. They love being around the players. But just the relationships they get out of coming to Mobile for that week is a huge benefit to them. So I see it as a positive.
Yeah, and you have Mike Harris out there, too, who was doing special teams for you guys.
Absolutely.
So a lot of fun. Jim, we can't wait to catch up with you again right before the Senior Bowl starts. Can't wait to get down there and watch all the great players you'll have set up down in Mobile. Thank you so much for the time, and God bless you. Next month is going to be, I'm sure, a lot of work, but it's going to pay off. Thanks so much for the time.
It's going to be fun, guys. No, if I don't see you, happy holidays, and we'll talk closer to the game. Thanks for having me on.
We'll see you in Mobile, Jim. Thanks.
Executive Director of the Senior Bowl. Draft season is presented by Moody's. We'll see you next time, everybody.